So let's get on with the show.
All right.
And we have joining us from merry old England.
All right.
Across the pond, as it were, Stuart Codling, and he is the author of Lamborghini, 60 Years. Stuart, good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning. Until it's after, you've confused me already because it's afternoon.
I know it's afternoon.
True.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon there. But at any rate, we sure appreciate you joining us today. How did you become an expert on Lamborghinis?
Well, I didn't really. I write about cars and mainly motor racing, but like most people, I love supercars, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Italian Exotica, and so when Motorbooks asked me to write a book about it, I thought, yeah, I'll do that because why not? Because it's great fun, and when you delve into the history of the cars, it's more about kind of history than in the nuts and bolts and mechanics, although you have to understand the mechanics as well, especially if you own a Lamborghini from the 1970s. It saves you an awful lot of money on mechanics bills if you can do a few things yourself on them.
You know, it's very interesting because I did not realize that Lamborghini has been around for 60 years. And that was kind of,
Yeah.
I always think, when I think Lamborghinis, I think that, oh, well, they got into business in about 1970-ish. And when I became more aware of Lamborghinis with the fabulous, beautiful, wonderful posters that every kid in America had on his bedroom wall, dreaming of the day that he could not only own it, but drive it as well. Well, little did I know.
That was the red Countach.
Yep. You know exactly the one I'm talking.
Yeah,
So
right
I
next
never
to my
had-
Farrah Fawcett.
I was going to say, there's a car in that picture.
Never had,
Yeah,
never
that's
had
right.
car pictures. I grew up in a boys' home, and they wouldn't let us do that. Yeah.
You did not. Go away. So what is the gist of the book? I mean, obviously it's a whole history of 60 years, but is there any particular area that you focused on?
We basically go all the way through from the beginning up until around about this time last year, which was when we finished. Did I just use the royal we? I mean, me and my editor, we sort of clicked send and it got sent to the printers. So yeah, we basically go through it car by car, pretty much. The annoying thing whenever you write a book is, and it happens when you work on magazines as well, is that there's always something that happens in that period between it shuffling off to the printers and the book or the magazine finally arriving on the shelves. So towards the end, I would probably, I seem to recall making some slightly catty comments about the Lamborghini management not being very engaged in electrification and suggesting that probably they need to consider probably adding some hybridization to their powertrains.
Right.
Like many performance brands, it's difficult because, you know, an electric motor
expensive,
kind of
yeah.
goes instead of boom. So, you know, it doesn't excite people in the same way a big engine does. So I kind of said, you know, Lamborghini as a brand needs to go beyond the people it's selling to at the moment. And in recent years, they've been targeting high net worth individuals, actually tailor making cars for them and kind of selling to, if you were to visit London, you tend to find people whose parents are wealthy oil barons who've been sent to be educated in London, whizzing around in gold-plated Lamborghinis, not really caring how much it costs to put fuel in them. You need to push beyond those people as a market. And lo and behold, between then and now, they've pivoted and they've announced some hybrid powertrains coming. So that's pretty exciting. But also, it kind of means that sort of last couple of pages of the book are now out of date. So yeah, maybe when we do a reprint, I'll tidy a few paragraphs up and maybe not make myself sound like a complete idiot.
Tidy a few paragraphs up. I like that sound.
Called rewrite.
Exactly. Yeah, I got to rewrite. Well, at least the end of it to bring it up to date. But let's go back to the beginning of Lamborghini. This is a 1960s car originally. And what did you learn about Mr. Lamborghini?
Well, he was an entrepreneur and also a consummate self-mythologist. So the origin story of the Lamborghini motorcar brand is just it's completely enveloped in myth. What we know about Ferruccio Lamborghini is that he, at the end of World War II, bought up a load of ex-military machinery that was no longer required and repurposed it as agricultural machinery. So he was basically a tractor manufacturer. He also did well out of making air conditioning, because that was a time when air conditioning was making everyone's lives better. And having grown wealthy from that, he bought himself a Ferrari. And this is where the myth begins. Although many people who own old Ferraris will be familiar with gearbox trouble. The story goes that Ferruccio Lamborghini got sick of having the clutch changed and his gearbox breaking. So he went to have it out with Enzo Ferrari, and Enzo Ferrari famously and allegedly said, what do you know about sports cars? You make tractors, get out of my sight. So at that point, Ferruccio Lamborghini thought to himself, well, tell you what, I'll go and make cars, and I'll make better cars than you. That's the way he tells it. There are other people close to the story who suggest slightly more plausibly that this conversation might have taken place. But also, Ferruccio, as someone who was already slightly involved in the vehicle industry, knew exactly how much a clutch cost. So he knew how much a clutch in one of his agricultural vehicles cost. And he was also looking at his service invoices from Ferrari and working out the colossal markup that Ferrari were making every time his gearbox broke. And he kind of thought, well, this could just be easy money, and why don't I get into sports car manufacture as well? Obviously, that story doesn't have quite the same excitement, and it's not going to get featured in any movies. I noticed that there's a Lamborghini origin story movie coming out in the next few months, which obviously replays this famous conversation. Whether you view it as plausible or not, that's up to you. Some moviegoers may find it difficult to swallow Gabriel Byrne playing Enzo Ferrari. I'm kind of wondering if maybe Gabriel had a tax bill to pay.
But that story still holds true today, of the price of the invoice to service and maintenance of Ferrari and the markup built into it still can anger a Ferrari customer.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's so expensive to service.
One of the first US customers of Ferrari, I'm trying to remember his name. I think he was some sort of Chicago industrialist or something. He sent his chauffeur down to New York to pick it up from the docks, and the car's engine broke en route, and the car ended up having to be shipped back to Italy, because at that point, 1951 or whatever, there was no service network. Luigi Chinetti had only just sort of set up shop, bringing Ferraris in, and one of his first acts, having brought a Ferrari in, was to send it right back to Maranello to have a new engine dropped in. So such was the lot of the Ferrari owner from the 1950s onwards.
Yeah. Well, where is Lamborghini made today?
They are made in Sant'Agata Bolognese, which is not very far from Ferrari. And that whole area of Italy, the Emilia-Romagna region, has quite a rich history with people living off the land. They grow grapes that make brilliant wine. They grow olives to make olive oil. They have a rich history in artisan metalwork, and that all comes from Roman times. Basically, when Roman soldiers, if they survived the wars, when they retired, they were given little plots of land in Emilia-Romagna, and they went into business. So some of them grew grapes, some of them grew olives, some of them got into metalwork, and that is why there are so many sort of small companies doing coach building services. So they'd build the coaches to go off the back of the sort of the horse and cart thing. Mm-hmm. When the automobile came into being, that industry pivoted towards building custom bodies for automobiles. So all the first Ferraris were tailor-made by coach builders, and the very first Lamborghinis were made by Carrozzeria Touring, who also made some of the first Ferraris before they sadly went bust as the era of the production line killed off that line of work.
Wow.
So have you ever owned a Lamborghini?
Sadly not. I've driven a few. I drove one around the back of a race once. I did PR for the Lamborghini Super Trofeo, which it's still going. It's a one make series for rich people who can sort of turn up, race a car. They get partnered with a professional driver, and that professional driver does a few laps of the race, and then the rich guy gets in. And they get, at the time, I think they got about 3 races a weekend. I was looking for somewhere quiet to telephone my wife, so I nicked the keys to the course car and got in it to sort of place this call, and slightly lost track of time. The next thing I knew, the race director was getting in the passenger seat, and he said, "Oh, come on, fire it up. We've got to go around the back, and I've got to sort of flag the race off." So I find myself driving around Spa-Francorchamps with this guy on a walkie-talkie in the passenger seat, trying to look competent.
What a great story!
That's a great story.
Yeah, hold my phone. Watch this.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously, the book is filled with, I assume, little bits and pieces like that story you just told, I hope.
Oh yeah, there's all sorts of stories there. We have a look at the origin story. We also have a look at the what I call the Setrite theory, which is the very learned automotive journalist Leonard Setrite proposed that there was the original Lamborghini V12 engine was not actually designed by Giotto Bizzarini, but it was actually bought in from Honda. And he makes a very good argument based on shared engineering details between sort of Honda engines at the time and the Lamborghini V12. But I think it's kind of wishful thinking, really, isn't it?
Exactly.
It makes a good story.
What's the story behind, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lamborghini generally named a lot of their vehicles after very famous fighting bulls. Is that correct?
That is true. Obviously, the Silhouette wasn't, but the Urraco, the Miura, a lot of the early ones, the Jalpa. As time has marched on, it's become a little bit more difficult to connect things with famous fighting bulls. But the Diablo kind of could have been one or the other, and I think the Murcielago, as the Spanish would no doubt call it, also named after a fighting bull.
Wow.
So that has been a tradition, because they did make some sort of GTs, but generally speaking, when you think of Lamborghini, you think of some hulking great beast with a noisy V12 engine, don't you? Rather than a genteel cashmere jumper over the shoulders, sort of gentleman's express.
And some of the cars were quite successful. Some of the cars, my opinion, were absolute flops. The Jalpa being one of them. That was not a car. When you think of Lamborghini, that's not one you think of.
Well, it's not just your opinion. I think its success was reflected in the sales sheet, which is takes. I think you could probably hard boil an egg in the time it takes to read through the names and addresses of anyone who ever bought one.
That's very interesting. Very interesting. How many pages in the book?
Oh, I don't know. I don't even have one with me to look.
Well, that's so funny, because I can kind of relate in the fact that somebody says to me, well, do you have like a demo reel of your voice work? No.
I'm talking to you.
I must have one somewhere in some box in the back here. The tape is probably all fallen apart. But
call Methodist Hospital and get put on hold, and you can hear Don talk.
There you go. Well, there's those.
Well, we look forward to you sending us a copy, and we'll count the pages here.
That's right. We will.
Well, what a great idea! Why haven't the Motor Books press people sent you a copy each?
Well,
I think
that's
that's
a good question. We could hold it up and we could show people what to look for.
Well, heck, you're a PR guy. You know how that works.
And you could autograph it for us.
I continue to be outraged. And I've got a box of them downstairs. Sadly, I don't live down the road, so I can't hand deliver them to you.
Well, listen, you've got work to do this afternoon, painting the fence.
Where can we find them other than
Amazon?
Well, can we get them on Amazon? I haven't even looked.
You can, but I'd recommend your local bookstore, and not just because they discount them on Amazon. And I think that does something horrendous to my royalties. And my cats are obligate carnivores. They can't live on discounted royalties.
Well, there's that.
So the other story I always thought was pretty cool about Lamborghini is about Valentino Balboni, who was ultimately the test driver of every Lamborghini that came off the production line at some point. Is that? I mean, I've heard that story for decades, and that I believe to be true. Is that? Did you have a chance to interview him for your book?
Sadly not, but he did contribute the foreword, which was very nice. He's now retired, and we do have some quotes from him. Sadly, he doesn't speak English, and I don't speak Italian, so it would have been a bit tricky. But we got someone to translate his words to create the foreword. But yeah, he basically, it's one of these typical sort of stories of someone who knocked on the factory door and asked for a job, got one, and he ended up being their principal test driver for many years. So there was not a single car that got signed off without Valentino Balboni finessing the handling in some way. And
what a great job that had to be.
You look at them, yeah, exactly. You look at them, and you find he did a good job. And there's never been an excuse note from Valentino Balboni. Whereas, let me have a think. Now, I forget the name of the Ferrari test driver in the 80s or 90s, but there is a story that he claims his excuse for the 348 being an absolutely lousy handling car is that he'd hurt his wrist while signing off the F40, and so someone else had to sign off the 348.
Of course, yeah. It's always,
He did it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, one of those kind of things. Well, Stuart, it is great to talk to you, and we wish you the best of luck on this wonderful book, Lamborghini 60 Years by Stuart Codling. Thanks again for joining us today, and we look forward to your next book. Stay in touch with us. We'd love to talk to you again soon.
Oh yeah, thank you for having me. And can I just ask before I go, do you ever have gate crashes? Because you're recording this live. Does anyone ever called out a SWAT team? Have you had someone?
Like every other week.
in?
Yeah. Very often. Yeah.
Just Don's girlfriend.
Yeah, there's that. So at any rate, Stuart, again, thank you very much, my friend. Take care of yourself and have a great day.
Thank you.
Have fun.
Most
Great
definitely.
interview. That was very interesting.
Yeah. That's a book that if you or someone you know is a car person,
Yeah.
I would recommend
A
that.
good tabletop book.
Yep, exactly. Hey, if you'd like to get in touch.